So, if you're going to talk about building cities, you have to talk about the tech industry. If you're going to talk about the tech industry, you're going to have to talk about immigration. If you're going to talk about immigration, you're going to talk about Forward US.
So I actually went here for university. I was here in the early 2000s. Was supposed to stay in Miami to be a banker at Smith Barney, but unfortunately, or fortunately, my wife's visa was denied to insufficient ties to her home country. So then we went to Sweden for a while, then we went to Latin America, and then we came back on a H-1B visa here in 2012 to work with Yellow Pepper.
The idea of insufficient ties is where the USCIS, which is the department that decides who gets in, who doesn't, looks at the immigrants and says, well, why are you coming, and do you intend to return home? Right? A lot of these visas are actually non-immigrant visas. The folks who are on L1, E2, H-1B visas, these are considered non-immigrant visas. So the idea is that these folks are going to come here, they're going to contribute their talent, or they're going to contribute their money, and then they're going to go home at some point, right? So, what happens is that if for some reason the government thinks that you don't have strong ties to your country, and then you may not have the intention to actually return. So with H-1B, that one is another non-immigrant visa, and the idea is that you're going to bring the top talent from other countries. An American company is selecting top talent from other countries to come work in the U.S. They're going to work here for 3 years, and they have an extension for another 3 years. And the idea is that this person with this talent is going to help this American company flourish and hopefully become more successful.
Almost 3 years ago, in May 2014, is when I immigrated here. I look back on that day very fondly, and I'm super excited to be here. And thank you so much for having me today and representing Wincode. It's awesome. So when we looked at doing this, we were living in Toronto. My co-founder is also my husband, and we really we knew the concept of a code school, which is teaching people in an accelerated format how to become web developers in a very short amount of time, so 10 weeks. So we take people from zero to in a job or launching their tech-enabled startup in 10 weeks' time. All markets need this, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So we were coming from a very established market. At the time we were living in Toronto. We had been there for just over 10 years. And we really wanted to go to a market where we could help create a wave rather than join a wave that was already happening. So everyone always asks us, why don't you go to an established tech hub? It's because we really wanted to come and be part of building a community. So we actually looked at Los Angeles and Austin, and Miami was third on the list because we thought, who thinks tech when you think Miami? Not a lot of people. I know I might be preaching to the choir here, and a lot of us know that tech is happening, but at the time it was very surprising, and all of my Northeasterners or Californians, they're still like, wow, so there's like tech companies in Miami? I'm like, yeah, it's a thing. So we really wanted to go to a market where there's a big gap in training and the need for talent. And at the time, I'll give you one of the computer programming languages that we teach at the time in 2014. The example in Miami was there were 43 qualified candidates for 410 open positions. So that was a huge gap, and just so everyone knows, that gap is growing exponentially. So we're trying to fill it, but we haven't even been able to fill it yet. So in order to do this, we had to look at different visa options, and we are on an E2 visa. So we brought in our talents, wanted to grow something, and invested in this community. And now we're a startup of the year. We have 400 graduates. 97% of those graduates are working in South Florida, placed in jobs building this ecosystem. So it's been an incredible journey so far, and we're actually partnered now with a Swedish company. So we're going to be bringing in even more immigrants to strengthen this ecosystem.
They're actually bringing their money and talents into our country, and the result is that Americans, we're getting employed. So I know that Wincode employs people and Americans. So the fact that she's here, her husband are here investing money, making us a stronger economy is fantastic. So thank you E2s and thank you Wincode.
I want to speak to something that Harry just mentioned, about jobs, because one of the myths around immigration is that, the folks you bring here are taking jobs away from American citizens. That's actually not true. You're creating an environment where people can come and work, and you're actually making people who are employable. So. Yeah,
we actually, in case you're not familiar with the E2 visa, we actually had to commit legally to hiring Americans, which we did so happily. We have a team now of 14 full-time individuals 3 part-time and 22 contracted, all of which are American. And it's been fantastic.
Cuba via Russia.
Yeah.
Like, how does that even happen? Like, tell me.
That's a crazy story, but no, first of all, thank you guys for having me here. I'm very proud to be part of this conversation. So I am an immigrant, as well as a lot of people here. My story is just another story of the fabric of Miami. So I was, my mother's Russian, my father's Cuban. I was born in Moscow, and at the age of 1, we moved to Cuba, and lived in Cuba until I was 12 years old. We got out of Cuba, thankfully, in 1992, right during the special period in Cuba. We went to Russia, lived in Russia for a while, and then Spain, and then moved to the US when I was a sophomore in high school. And in high school, I was introduced by my math teacher to the biography of Andrew Grove. And Andrew Grove is a Hungarian immigrant who was born in 1936, survived Nazi Germany, communism in Hungary, and fled Hungary during the Hungarian Revolution when he was 20 years old. He came here, got a PhD at Berkeley, and started Intel. And because of him, now Silicon Valley exists. And so, and one of the reasons why that biography kind of drove me, and it still does today, his management book sits on my desk today, is because he never made excuses. He just kind of always worked, always wanted to employ people. And that's kind of, I mean, I'm like a tiny, tiny fraction of what this is, but that's what we're hoping that happens in Miami, right? Miami is the natural habitat for immigrants, right? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of us here. Our company today, Everymundo, hires 54 people. Like Ted said, most of us are immigrants. Speaking to this specialty visas, we have 23% of our workforce, just like a lot of other big tech companies. We're a tiny one. We're professional visas, right? The H-1Bs, which is this professional visa, and the TNs, which are professional specialty visas with NAFTA. And NAFTA right now is under threat, and H-1Bs, obviously, there's a lot of conversation about going on. So I have a lot of questions about this stuff.
We do know, based on some of the things that happened in the last couple of weeks with the travel ban. With that being said, my advice to a lot of my clients that are traveling outside of the United States is to reconsider, I think, whether or not you want to go through that. Unless your business needs to, and a lot of people do, they're going to need to travel with more preparation, more documents on them. So if they're a foreign worker, an investor here in the U.S., like Joe, you're going to need to bring copies of how you made your investment here in the United States. There's going to be more burdens on non-immigrants, on temporary visitors, temporary workers, investors here in the United States than ever before, unfortunately. So my advice is to be very careful, scrub your social media, be a little careful, unfortunately, because we're in different times right now with this administration. And we have to be aware of what they're going to try to do and not just assume that it's going to be okay, and be prepared for those questions, and I think everything will be fine in the end.
Well, let me ask both you and Michael and Harry this. You work, like I said, you work closely with this community. Are you seeing any sort of hesitation to invest now in the U.S., or is that happening as we speak, or?
A little bit. I think, I've had an potential investor out of Hong Kong who's Filipino, and was really interested in making a $500,000 investment through an investment program that allows foreigners to contribute to a pooled fund, for example, to be able to construct a building or a condo or create jobs, basically, in the United States. And then after the election of Trump, they essentially changed course. They said they didn't want to come any longer. They didn't want to invest. They just would rather stay over there in Hong Kong. And I tried to persuade them. I said, look, come to Miami, because Miami's a little bit different than other cities, right, where there have been maybe some hate-filled situations going on. But Miami really is a unique city because we're not really just your typical American city. We're an international city here.
You know, Alex, you've worked all around the world, literally. You know, you've been in different countries, different continents, Asia, Europe. Looking at your bio, what makes Miami attractive? You know, I heard, you know, Mike just mentioned, you know, we're an international community, but what made Miami attractive for you, and what made you want to come to Miami?
No, I think Miami is a great melting pot, right? And it has been for a very, very long time, and you feel at home from wherever you're from. And I think they have done very good with the actual integration of the immigration, right? And which is very different from where I'm from in Sweden, where refugees or immigrants are extremely segregated and career opportunities are quite slim. So I think Miami and US, to a certain extent, are doing very well on the integration. And obviously, since we have a lot of business in Latin America, the vicinity and the communications to Miami makes it very, very good for us. Right?
Definitely.
To be completely truthful, if we're looking in our industry, which is development, US development resources are not necessarily at the top level. I think US is ranked 28th in the world, where most of the talent is in Asian countries or European countries, and therefore it's even more important for us to be able to recruit this type of talent, right, and bring them here to be able to foster new talent.
I'll quickly actually add to that, because what we're really charged with at WinCode is training the talent to work locally and build a sustainable local ecosystem. So this is a really big problem. You know, there's this huge gap in a need for technical talent at all levels, from junior to mid to senior. And I'm actually very proud to say that we work with Yellow Pepper and also with Everymundo, which is fantastic. But the need is that with the immigration stuff, it's really important to support these kind of companies to bring in leaders in technology, because it helps them grow as a company. And if the companies aren't growing, then they're definitely never going to be able to hire local talent. And then the other thing that's really important is when you have an ecosystem like this where you're fostering from the ground up, you know, fostering junior talent, you need experienced engineers and developers on the team existing so that they can mentor and nurture these people beyond the education that they've received. You really have to learn on the field. So this is a really important topic for us, and something that, you know, not just Miami, but every city is really going to need to address, because the quick thing to mention to everyone is, for a time, some people think about technology as a separate sector, but I say this on every panel I'm at. Technology is really something you need to think about. How does it affect you personally? How does it affect your business? Because technology is every business, you know? And so that means that every single city, every company is going to need tech talent. So the need to build a sustainable local ecosystem is really, really important. But you can't do a sudden jump. You know, say they close the doors to immigrant tech talent. That's not going to solve the problem, because you're not going to suddenly turn a junior developer into a senior just because you close the doors. So we still do need that mentorship and that training, and bringing in you know, talent from around the world serves many, many purposes and objectives, and really helps the US grow and those companies grow, and ultimately our local talent, if you think about the whole funnel.
And Teddy, there's a deficit in the knowledge of your standard US-born student. I saw a statistic that says that 2 out of every 3 engineering degrees granted in the United States are granted to foreigners right now. Other statistics, you have 50% of, I think, in a 10-year period of the new Silicon Valley companies are established by foreigners. You have a lot of other you know, numbers like that, where 40% of Fortune 500 companies over a 10-year period, I think in 2002 to 2012, were established by foreigners. You know, look at Google, look at Adobe. Right. The technology is, like Joe said, is not just part of one particular industry. It's part of our lives today, more and more. And the government just really doesn't understand, I think in some cases, the numbers that are before them, where for example, what foreign workers do, like the H-1B program, what they do to stimulate our economy, the hundreds of thousands of US jobs that they end up creating as a result, and the innovation that they spur in this country.
I also like to add, the new administration, the White House, needs to consider that, and they know this, that when we're talking about immigrants, we're talking about America competing for top talent and competing for investment dollars, right? So there's other great countries out there, strong economies. why shouldn't all these folks just go to, say, for example, Australia or, say, England or Canada, right? So we have to kind of frame it in a global sense that our country is competing for this talent and this money. So if we close our doors, if we start sending a message out there that we're walling ourselves in, we are going to miss out in this great talent. It may go somewhere else. Recently read an article about like a top Indian CEO, and I wish I could remember the company name, that they were saying, well, if you're going to wall off entry, the H-1B actually brings in a lot of folks from India. So we'll just keep them, and we'll make India great, right?
Right.
That's the idea. So if you're going to make America great again, well, we'll just make India fantastic. And that's a concern, right? Well, they have a lot of talented people with a lot of education. And so it makes sense.
We're all immigrants. We have big dreams, and we truly want to make a difference in this city. And we're a bootstrapped company. And for us to be able to grow and bring the tech talent that we need to disrupt, in our case, the airline space, we need to be able to recruit outside of the United States, and we need to be able to look south, right? There's 800 million people and there's a lot of talent down there. And so some of our top developers, like Joanna just started to mention, is they come to the US, they bring their families, and you can only imagine how good the kids of our top developers are in schools here. And those kids are going to add so much value to Miami again as it evolves. So when they come here, by the way, we have to pay them a good salary, a reasonable salary for their skills. They also teach junior developers their skills, and they allow junior developers to then teach others, right, and bring the talent and the skill to Miami, which the reality is that Miami today lacks AI technology experts. They lack big data experts, right? And these are the fields that we're playing in. And so it's either we outsource all of our talent and we just essentially use video conferencing in order to hire developers, or we figure out ways to bring them into Miami and to bring their families to Miami so that they can improve our world, right? The world that we live in. And so that sign, we put up the sign, and it kind of united our company. It was one of those things where we always talk about the American dream. We always talk about, being an immigrant and hustling. But the sign really represented, we were really proud of it. I mean, we were showing people, we obviously put it up on social media, and it got an amazing response. Unfortunately, our landlord is a big Trump supporter and essentially threatened to kick us out of the building in order to keep and so we had to remove the sign. So the sign said, "We are immigrants," right?
A lot of different bills have been introduced into Congress for quite a while. Unfortunately, our Congress really moves at worse than a snail's pace to try to get anything done. Some of the things that have been suggested, I think, that could really help. For example, one would be a market-based cap for say H-1B specialty and professional workers that would be tied to the say the U.S. economy, so that because in the past, when the U.S. economy's been doing really well, the usage of these visas has gone down. It hasn't been needed. We used to have 115,000 or more a year of these H-1B visas, and we weren't using all of them. Now we're limited to 65 to 85,000 visas a year, and not everyone can obtain one. It's less than a 50% chance of getting one of these visas. And one of the problems with this visa category, unfortunately, is we have studies that, for example, the New York Times has reported about, where 13 out of the 13 companies, 13 companies, even less, nationwide, really use about 1/3 of these 85,000 visas available each year. And the reality is there's only like 15,000 companies that really would truly need these visas, but they can't get access to them. They can't get access to foreign workers that are going to stimulate the economy and grow it. So I would reform the process to allow for small and medium-sized companies that either have substantial revenue points or investment points in their company, or other U.S. workers, to be able to go out there and hire foreign talent, maybe not necessarily based on their bachelor's degree, but other experience areas, other measures to be able to have staffing, be complemented with foreign workers here. That can
And I
innovate.
think, well, definitely the entrepreneur companies, the small tech companies like this gentleman's, they struggle when it comes to H-1B time. Partly because when the petition does get selected from the lottery, the USCIS looks at the petition and says, okay, this is a small company. Do they actually have the ability to pay? Right? So we have to put in a lot of documentation in there that says, well, look, here's what they have. But sometimes they don't have enough margins. And that's when they get pushed back from the government. So I would tell our congressmen to be reminded that these small companies actually employ a lot of people, can employ a lot of people, have a lot of potential. And while they may not have all the money immediately, that they will be even more successful with this foreign H-1B person. The second message I would ask our local congressmen is to put out a message saying, hey, Miami's open for business. Come invest in here. I would send a message out to all the continents, Europe, Latin America, Asia, those folks who are investing here and saying, hey, invest in your EB-5, invest in your E-2, invest in your L-1 visa. Come here to Miami, make it happen.
So you said, Miami's open for business. So I want to ask our entrepreneurs on the panel, what do you see as the future of Miami tech? You've all contributed to the tech scene, you've seen it grow over the years. And so what do you see as the future and the vision of a Miami tech scene?
No, but I think it's been great progress for the past 5 years I've been here, but then the past 10 years has been tremendous what has happened, right? So I definitely think there is something growing. There is a tech community growing. Talent is improving. There is still a lot of issues that we need to address with talent in order to grow further, but you and Johanna is doing a fantastic job in assisting in that. The VC part is obviously lacking, and that is something that we really need to get working on. And then if we have a couple of successful exits, I really think that can bolster and make sure that we get more credibility to the tech scene that is actually growing here.
Companies to grow, they really need like two key things, talent and capital, in addition to great people at the helm. I think for us personally, like the experience has been like we came to Miami, and if you have an idea, you execute, you do what you say you're going to do, I mean, good things will happen. I will say that having looked at Los Angeles and Austin, and now having chosen Miami as our headquarters, like hindsight is 2020, but that was one of the best decisions we made for our business. And it's very, very cool. It's very rewarding to be part of building a local ecosystem. So yes, we have a ways to go on the capital and the talent side, but that's a great thing because that means that there's room for opportunity. There's room for all of us to grow and to build some really great things here. So on a personal note, it's been really great. And I think it's great that there's room to grow. So there's good things coming down for Miami.
I'm actually kind of going to disagree with the exit strategy. I think that we have to have companies, tech companies, that look at Miami as a long-term goal and not so much as the exit. And that's kind of an environment that, startups, that's kind of the way the natural progression of a startup goes, right? You start it, you build it, and then you sell it. But I truly think that it's about the long term. Also about acquiring talent outside of Miami and bringing them to Miami. Miami now has a beautiful history of immigrant talent, and we're starting to see the fruits of that. It's taken, tens, dozens of years, obviously, for us to get to this point. And now there's a lot of organizations that are starting to grow the ecosystem of tech companies here. WinCode, Endeavor, and iFoundation is really big. But we lack investment, we lack the talent, and that's why this conversation is so important, is because we really need to bring the talent here. Once we have the talent here, the investment will come. But I truly believe it's about building a company, a tech company that our kids will work for, and that's kind of how we look at it.
I'll just really quickly add, because that's a super important point, and I really agree with that. One point of validation for us has been that we actually, so we launched in Miami, and now the partners, we just closed a round of 1 million funding, and that is a Swedish company. So they chose us as their US expansion. So, you know, talk about awesome validation for Miami being a great place to start a business. They could have gone anywhere. They were looking at New York. We talked to them, and they agreed once they were educated on this market that this was a great place for them to launch their US expansion with us. So just to, you know, hopefully we'll have many more like that and have a lot more companies here where our kids will work for, as Anton said.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys, you know, contributing your thoughts. And I think the one thing I gathered from today's conversation is that we need to develop more talent, definitely, which, you know, Jan is working on, you know, dutifully. But also, you know, we need to keep our doors open, you know, and keep Miami open for business, as, you know, as Harry mentioned as well too, you know, because we need the talent. Go ahead. Mike.
We need more entrepreneurial initiatives by the government to allow either foreigners that have received either angel investment like that or other investment sources to qualify in different ways than traditionally you do.
Right.
Entrepreneurs are not benefiting still, even though the government's tried a little bit under Obama, it just hasn't really happened there.
And those two things can happen together. We can bring immigrant talents, and we could also grow our local talent as well. They don't have to necessarily collide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So if we can work together, and I think WinCode is a good example of that. Immigrant talent from Canada, and now employing Americans here. Right?
Absolutely.
So having grown up in Chicago, but having been born in Miami, I can compare both cities. And Chicago is much older, of course, right? And there's a lot of companies there, but they've spent time owning that city. The people who are from there feel they're from that city. Miami needs to do the same. Miami, we need to feel like this is our city, so we can invest in it, grow in it, and grow our human capital, our knowledge, so that when our kids do get out of college, they don't have to go to the big cities. They can make it happen here. So we just need to feel like a sense of belonging here in Miami, and it can happen.
So we're coming to an end. I have a couple minutes left, but I wanted to open up to any questions that any of you might have had for any of our panelists.
The importance of reform was mentioned, and obviously that happens at the government level, but how can entrepreneurs get involved in that process of reforming visa programs, different entrepreneurial initiatives by the government, getting more active?
So the way you guys can get informed is, you know, to actually become involved with organizations like Ford. You know, we help people get their message out.
Yeah, you have to get involved with organizations, but you need to talk to your congressional representatives, your senators, but you need to provide them information and data that shows them the benefits of, you know, what you're doing yourself with foreign workers, if that's the case, or how many other U.S. workers are you employing besides those workers that are from foreign countries. Show them the results. Speak to your representatives. I mean, that is really critical. I think that if they don't know, they're going to act like they don't know.
Right.
So.
And in your bag today is a fact sheet about Florida's, or about contributions from the immigrant community to the state of Florida. It's literally in the billions of dollars.
Recently, there have been a lot of actions in the local government with what the mayor said about the county not being a sanctuary city, and the commission last week, a majority went along with that. So I'm just wondering, I have a lot of activist friends and organizers that were in the chambers, you know, fighting with local folks, well, not fighting, but, you know, advocating on behalf of local people. And I'm wondering how many local businesses were there fighting on their behalf as well, because we're talking about, I guess the mayor's worried about federal funding not coming in, but now we're going to know that investors are not as likely to come in because we don't want to support local immigrants. So I'm just curious, how many people on this panel were in the chambers also advocating with everyone? That was
one of the things that I wanted to say to that is that, again, back to the Andrew Grove story, the founder of Intel that I talked about. So again, he fled Nazi Germany, communism, right? It's the same thing that's happening in the Muslim world, right? In a big part of the Muslim world, or a small portion of the Muslim world. And we're having this conversation about banning these amazing people, right? And this isn't H-1Bs or anything like that. This is just pure immigration, right? Same thing as the Mexican workers that come here, and they want to give their family a better life. And this is what this country has built on, right? And so had we banned Andrew Grove in 1956, right, we wouldn't have Intel, and we wouldn't have Silicon Valley, and we probably wouldn't be sitting here, right? And so it's really important for our businesses to get involved. And one to your question, actually, I think we should let the market and the world kind of bring this to the attention is hustle online and find the best talent. Don't only look at talent in Miami. Look at talent in Brazil. Look at talent in Chile, in Ecuador, in Cuba. Cuba has incredible talent. And figure out ways to bring them here. There's ways to hustle that talent in here, and you're going to be a much better company for it, because once they're here working with you together, they're going to hustle, and they're going to teach the American workers, like Joanna said, they're going to make you a better company. This is kind of how we live our life, you know, our company life. So.
Yeah, and just like Harry said, it doesn't, you know, the intersection of hiring immigrants and training and hiring locally, definitely, that's actually a really great relationship. That nets positives for everyone. So for us, a real stat is typically for every senior hired, and if a company is well funded, they're gonna hire 2 juniors, and most likely those juniors are gonna be local. So just to give you an idea of why that's a good idea.
I'm a board certified immigration lawyer, so I still have clients that are either risk of deportation, fearing deportation, family issues, family immigration. I would say you still need to talk to the city. What the city did last week was to agree to detain criminal aliens, people that have been encountered somehow by the Miami-Dade, Miami City Police Department, to put an immigration detainer on them. What you still need to talk to the city, because we still have to fight about it, because so should someone who gets pulled over for a speeding ticket be put under an immigration detainer? I would say no. That will hamper immigrant communities here, legal immigration as well. You should talk to your state representatives. We really need, for example, you know, if someone's undocumented, should they not be able to purchase car insurance and have a driver's license? I think they should be able to. So those are some of the other problems we still need to fight for immigrants and other people here in the city.
And the commission's vote supports a narrow application of the law, which is, like my colleague said, Michael, that essentially it's the detaining of illegal immigrants or undocumented people who have some criminal record. Now, it seems very narrow in scope, but the signal that it sends throughout Miami-Dade is that, hey, we're anti-immigrant all of a sudden, right? So the story has, while it has a very narrow application in the law, it impacts us all, because then we start fearing or feeling like we're not wanted here, right? We immigrants, we people with talent and abilities. So I think that's really the impact. Certainly the people who have criminal records and you know, maybe are harming our society, that makes sense. But the issue is that it's the message that it seems to be sending. I think that's what it really hurts.
And Miami stopped doing what they, you know, were now doing again a few years ago, because the federal government wasn't paying them for the cost of keeping foreign persons that have committed crimes in jail. But they were trying, you know, anyone that was normally subject to bail or bond, the government would say hold on to them longer. So if they go back to the way that they used to do it, you know, hopefully they're not just detaining anyone based on certain, you know, very minor, you know, misdemeanors, for example, traffic incidents, things like that. I don't see them doing that, and I think there's still a huge wave of support to stop them from doing that and harming our immigrant communities.
We're out of time today, so I want to thank our panelists for joining us.